Well, it's time for another episode of After the Message. It's where we answer some questions that you've had. And this week we're in Ephesians 2 at the very beginning, and I've only received one question. So either you guys are just digging and are figuring it out, or I don't know. But anyway, I've got one question. It's a simple question, but a good question, a deep question, one that maybe we'll skim over if we're not careful. But in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 1, Paul says this to everyone, to all believers, and he wanted you to know and remind you. It says that you were dead in trespasses and sins. And the individual asks, what's the difference between sins, trespasses, and transgressions? Sins, trespasses, and transgressions. It's a great question. And so here, Paul talks about trespasses and sins. Other verses like Psalm 32:5, it says, I acknowledged my sin to you and did not cover up my iniquity. There's another word. I'll confess my transgressions to the Lord. All in that one verse, you've got sin, iniquity, transgressions, right? So specifically, though, we're going to talk about the difference between sin, trespasses, and transgressions. And I just want you to know that all of these are kind of synonymous with sin. And so you need to know what sin is. Sin, in the New Testament, it translates a Greek word that means to miss the mark. It actually means to miss the mark by aiming at the wrong mark. So imagine it, if you're a hunter, or you shoot guns, or you do bow and arrow. Do bow and arrow? You can tell I don't do bow and arrow. But anyway, it's the idea of missing the mark because you're aiming at the wrong mark. Sin means to miss the mark. What's the mark? It's the mark that God has set for us, the standard, if you will. So sin, in the general, it refers to missing the mark or falling short of the glory of God. It's his standard, right? And we know his standard is perfection. That's why we need Jesus, because Jesus came, Jesus lived a sinless life, and he met the standard. He satisfied God's standard, perfection, and we can't on our own, which is why we need Christ. There's a couple of scripture references I wanted to share with you. Sin can refer to doing something against God or against a person. Exodus 10:16, doing the opposite of what is right, Galatians 5:17, doing something that will have negative results, Proverbs 24:33 through 34, and failing to do something is right. James chapter 4 talks about this. This is the word, sin is the word that Paul uses a lot. In Romans chapter 5, verses 12 and 13, this is what Paul says about sin. He says, therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men because all sinned. For sin indeed was in the world before the law was given, but sin is not counted where there is no law. Missing the mark, that's what sin is. And you and I, we're born with this sin nature. We're going to miss the mark, which is why we need Jesus. Well, what about transgressions? A transgression means overstepping a line. If you go on and read in Romans chapter 5, the next verse in 14, listen to what Paul says. Yet death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over those whose sinning was not like the transgression of Adam, who was a type of the one who was to come. In other words, God gave us his law, and we cross the line. When we transgress, we choose to intentionally disobey. Transgression is willful trespassing. Adam knew a line, don't eat. Don't eat, Adam. But he stepped over the line and ate willingly. That's a transgression. When you know what to do and you choose not to do that, that's a transgression. Now, trespass, the definition is, and it means an offense or false step a violation of a known rule, for example. So sin is the broad term, and trespass can go underneath it. But our sin nature leads us to trespassing. You say, well, that sounds a lot like a transgression. Yes, but a trespass may be unintentional as well as intentional. Also, a trespass can mean this falling away. So an idea of someone is saved following Jesus, and you've heard that term backslide, or they used to be close and now they've fallen away. That's trespassing. I think about Peter, right? When Peter walked with Jesus, was close to Jesus, he even swore, I'm not going to deny you. What happens? He falls away and he denied Jesus 3 times. Trespasses. See, we all cross the line every day. We cross, we sin. Sometimes willingly, and sometimes it's unintentional that we cross. So that's the differences between sin, transgression, and trespasses. All of them are wrong. All of them miss the mark. So thanks for the question, and keep digging, guys. If you have more questions, don't forget to submit them on our app. Really excited about what God's doing. Ephesians 2, we're going to continue there and go into a little bit of Ephesians 3 this Sunday. The last half of Ephesians 2, I'm pumped about. It's about diversity. It's about the church. It's just about unity. So make sure to join us. I can't wait to see you. Spread the word. Invite people. Keep digging. Become a disciple of Christ. Get in the word so the word gets into you. God bless you.